All City Network here at the winter meetings in San Diego, covering baseball. What we do best, gentlemen. Patrick Lyons from DNVR Rockies.
Jesse Friedman from PHNX.
Ryan Herrera, CHGO Cubs.
And we've got ourselves a sleeping giant because the Los Angeles Dodgers lost about $100 million off their payroll and all kinds of free agency. Cody Bellinger, pretty good player. Boom, they just saved $18 million. Tyler Anderson saved a bunch of money there. Trey Turner, probably love to have him back. He's gone. They've got $100 million. And right now, especially with Justin Verlander already off the board, Jacob DeGrom already off the board, it seems as if, Jesse, they're just kind of lying in the weeds. Are they going to do anything? We know they are, but are they?
I feel like, yeah, I mean, them being the Dodgers, like you have to assume they're going to come out and be aggressive in some sense, right? But yeah, I have been kind of surprised with what I've heard about the Dodgers so far. It seems like they're kind of they're interested in the big name free agents. You're seeing the Dodgers name thrown out there in the Judge conversations and the Correa conversations and pretty much all the big name free agents, but they don't really seem to be like favored in any of those situations. And so I just think it sets up this interesting situation from not only a Diamondbacks perspective, but I guess from a Rockies perspective as well. It just doesn't seem like, looking at this Dodgers roster and, the fact that they don't have Walker Buehler next year, the fact that, they brought back Clayton Kershaw, but they're missing Tyler Anderson, like you said. DeGrom and Verlander are officially off the board at this point. It seems like this Dodgers team could take a step back going into next year. And based on what we're hearing, it doesn't sound like they're about to replace, all 100 million that just came off their payroll with free agents. It just doesn't sound like the move they're looking to make right now.
You know what might happen? The Dodgers just bring up some random prospect that people have heard about, but like not nationally known. And he comes up and he's like rookie of the year contender. And he just that's what the Dodgers are going to do, because they always do that. They have such a deep farm system that like they may not be looking like major players in free agency right now, but they have players waiting in the wings that will come up and be good players, because that's just what the Dodgers do.
So right now, between the three of us, even if they don't replace anyone, they got Gavin Lux at shortstop. Good, right? Good guy.
Yeah,
Chris Taylor at second base. Great. Maybe move Mookie Betts into center field. You're bringing up someone. You put Miguel Amaya out there. There's a couple other different options. Would you still, even with the guys that they've lost coming off the books, and no one replaces them, just their backups now. The sixth start in the rotation now moves up as the number 5 guy. Would you still pick the Dodgers to win the NL West over the Padres?
I don't know if I would.
No, man.
I don't know if I would, honestly.
No?
I don't think I would. By the end of the offseason, I think I will, because I do think the Dodgers are going to come out and do something. Maybe it's a trade rather than, signing a guy like Aaron Judge. Maybe that's kind of their play here. I heard Ken Rosenthal say on a podcast yesterday that he wondered if the Dodgers were sort of waiting for Shohei Ohtani next offseason, if maybe that's kind of, they're kind of playing the waiting game here and trying to really get their guy and wait for that. But yeah, right now, I don't think so. Like a rotation of Julio Urias, right? Like he's one of the best starters in the game.
Free agent, going into his free agent year.
Agent year.
He's going to continue to be good.
He's going to continue to be good. Kershaw, still, I mean, he's aged incredibly well, even though the injuries have obviously been an issue for him.
Great number 2 starter.
Yeah. But then after that, it's kind of like, okay, you've got Tony Gonsolin, who is really, really good.
All-star.
Right? Yeah. I mean, very, very good, but also doesn't have necessarily the track record that,
True.
A lot of the guys in some of the last few Dodgers rotations have had. And then after that, I mean, there's Dustin May. Like there's
pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, like there's
what's
guys,
the problem here?
There's guys, but my point is that it's just, there's a lot more volatility with the Dodgers roster, I think, than what we've seen in the past. But yes, I mean, they could come out and win 100 games next year with the roster that they have if enough things go right. So I'm not here to say the Dodgers are, going to be terrible in 2023 or anything. But they're just more vulnerable. They're just a team where it's like, interesting. If you're not getting any of these big name free agents, and especially with Justin Verlander off the board now, I wondered if he might be a target for them, given that he was looking for, a shorter term deal than some of the other guys. It's interesting that, they don't have a super clear path to regaining everything they lost right now.
Yeah. And then when I look at it, and you mentioned the Padres, like think about the fact that I don't remember how many games left, but they're going to get Fernando Tatis back pretty Quickly.
Yeah.
And so that they were, a playoff team, knocked off the Cardinals. No, it wasn't the Cardinals. It was the who'd they beat in the playoffs? The Padres.
Mets.
The Mets. There you go.
Yeah.
Knocked off the Mets. 101 win team Mets. And that's all without arguably their best player, Fernando Tatis. Like that, they're going to get him back, and whatever hole the Padres have, they can probably plug him in there, even whether it's back at shortstop, center field. Like they'll have him. Whereas, like you said, the Dodgers, maybe the roster is a little more volatile, a little less star-studded than what we're used to. Whereas the Padres are bringing a lot of guys back and then just adding Fernando Tatis into that mix. Right now, I might say the Padres would be my NL West favorites.
It is curious. It is curious that they're not attached to any of those bigger name guys. But you can also understand too that, again, look, they turned a guy like Tyler Anderson, who, the Rockies.
Yeah, it's sort of like they don't even need the big name guys. Like.
No, because they can build those guys out of nowhere. And of course, obviously, the argument is like, well, if they couldn't do it with Cody Bellinger, but that can kind of be the exception to the rule.
Sure.
They can find those affordable guys to save money. But even still, I mean, you can afford to spend $50 million in free agency this offseason and still have $50 million next offseason to bring in a Shohei Ohtani.
Yeah.
So they're going to do something, but you're right. It is strange that they're not attached to some of the bigger name guys. Or again, maybe they're just seeing value. Maybe it's kind of similar to the AJ Pollock, where, you know that very well from his time in the Diamondbacks.
Yeah.
They sort of saw him as being that value play. And I don't know that they got their money back for it, but maybe Brandon Nimmo is that guy and not Aaron Judge, and maybe it isn't, Verlander, DeGrom, or even Carlos Rodón. It's somebody on the lower tier, like a Jameson Taillon or Kodai Senga
comes in and becomes an ace or something.
Yeah.
I could definitely see something.
There's a reason they've won, and it's not just because the West has been like weak for a while, but it's like there's a reason the Dodgers have been so dominant and have won 9 of the last 10 NL West division titles and have made the playoffs every year in the last 10 years. Like they're an organization that will figure it out. They'll figure it out, and I mean, as far as like Cubs, Diamondbacks, Rockies, like those, like fans of each of those teams hope their organization can end up being like that. They haven't, but like the Dodgers are like the model organization that every team in baseball wants to become, because even though they don't win the World Series every year, they give themselves a chance. And like the more times you get in it, the better your chances are you're going to eventually win one. Right.
Yeah. I'm curious, what's your guys' take on the Dodgers? Just like, this isn't a new thing this offseason, right? The Dodgers, I don't know if like rising above is the right phrase to use, but they just don't get caught in some of the free agent negotiations that other teams do, right? It feels like they operate more smartly than a lot of other teams around the league, which is weird. I mean, a team that brings in the kind of revenue that they do, you would just kind of naturally expect, like, okay, the Dodgers, like even if a deal doesn't work out that well for them, like it's not going to hurt them that much, right? Like they're not going to be like hindered from doing other moves that they want to do. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. What do you think about the Dodgers? Just like ongoing, just like philosophy within the organization. Like, no, we're not going to go get the biggest name free agent. Freddie Freeman, I guess, being sort of the exception. But I mean, even that was a pretty reasonable contract, all things considered. Yeah.
No, they do everything well, which allows them to do everything well. Right. Like you can kind of sit back and say, well, how do you acquire players? Like player acquisition? What does that break down to? Drafting, our international free agents, making trades, free agency. Those are like the 4 main ways. And if you can balance that out and basically find where to best, make those investments, that's how you can make the best move and say, okay, we don't need to make the big free agent splash, because you know what?
Yeah.
We're kind of finding in some of these conversations we're having with teams, it might be easier to acquire a guy via trade of this type and then go out. So again, you can go and maybe make a trade for a Brian Reynolds, let's say, if he's a guy that you target. That's going to be a lot cheaper than getting into the Judge market or even the Brandon Nimmo market, which I think is going to be surprisingly high for a lot of people. And you say, well, that's better. Now we can go and maybe get a more average type player to fill out some of the other areas. And then overall, we got the talent that we needed to, and we got it at such a lower cost, which means, again, now we've got the freedom to do other things. Or we can even go ahead and make a trade and add payroll. I mean, go back to the deal they made with the Reds a few years ago, where they dumped off, Yasiel Puig, Matt Kemp, Alex Wood, all those contracts to the Reds who tried to contend for 1 year. And they took back, Homer Bailey to just eat some money. They cut him. And then they also got Josiah Gray and Jeter Downs, 2 really big prospects for the Reds that they turned around. They used Downs in a deal to acquire Mookie Betts. They used Josiah Gray in the deal to get Turner and Max Scherzer. And you go, they do everything right.
Mhm.
And that allows them to do everything right.
Yeah, they do all that, and then they still have like 7 top 100 prospects. Like they're always fine in that. And who was the catcher they traded? They had like one of the top prospects.
And
Keeper Ruiz. Yeah, that was like their.
Now they got another new catcher, in Diego Cartaya. So I mean, they're absolutely loaded. So we're not necessarily worried. In fact, we're glad to have this feeling that maybe, just maybe, they're not going to do something big. But we know here, unfortunately, in the NL West, that the Dodgers are going to do something, and it's probably going to be pretty good. And we'll, of course, have that locked and loaded here all week down at the winter meetings. It's All City Network, DNVR, PHNX, and CHGO. Make sure you hit us up on Twitter and anywhere you guys watch on YouTube.